Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Abha Monibaru, presenting a case of prolonged acute hepatitis. Is there more to it? Under guidance of Dr. Abha Nagral, Madam, from Kasturba Hospital of Infectious Disease, Mumbai. The child, a 9-year-old female, born of third-degree consanguineous marriage, with the chief complaints of fever for 15 days, gradually progressive abdominal distension for 5 days, altered sensorium for 1 day. There is no history of similar illness in the past, no history of any liver disease in the family, and the child is developmentally normal. This is the child. The weight of the child is 23 kg, lies in the 10th centile. Height of 130 centimeters, lies in the 25th centile. The vitals are stable with a heart rate of 104 per minute, respiratory rate of 24 per minute, blood pressure of 110 by 70 millimeter mercury. Icterus and pedal edema were present on admission. However, no evidence of any vitamin deficiency or no stigmata of chronic liver disease was present. Perabdominally, hepatomegaly was there, which was firm and with sharp edges, with a span of 10 centimeter. Just palpable spleen was there. Shifting dullness was present. Grade 1 encephalopathy was there. Chest and cardiovascular system examination was normal.
Okay, can you just stop this? Okay, so before I come to the panel, let me just put this out to the audience. Just on these two slides, just basic history and clinical examination. What is your opinion? What are we really dealing with? We obviously don't have a diagnosis, but there's something coming on the mind. Looking like a child who's having some sort of a hepatitis problem, presenting acutely, disease is only for 15 days, but the firm, sharp liver is something that is a little unusual. Would that be expected in an acute illness? Panel.
The sharp edge of the liver makes it appear like more of a chronic liver disease than acute liver disease, and the firm and sharp liver. But
okay.
Then there's a large liver. It's not a shrunken, it's a large liver.
Okay. Anything else? Just on this slide which is shown over here. Obviously there's an encephalopathy. Sorry? There is a spleen that is palpable, little unusual. We'll keep that in mind. Again, something that is supposed to flag us that there is something else going on in this particular child. Yes, why would the child have a pedal edema if it is just a plain and simple acute illness? So there are 2 or 3 pointers over here to say that this may be an acute hepatitis, but there is something else going on. So we require something more.
As we had discussion in the first case, more than 5 years, you don't expect normal hepatitis A to be associated with the edema and hypoalbuminemia.
Right. I mean, this is just a borderline case. So whether it's less than 5 or more than 5 is just borderline. But there is something in this to suggest that this is not acute.
This child is 10-year-old.
10-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there, from the panel, anything else that you would like to comment just on what we have here, besides what has already been talked about?
The child also has ascites.
Right.
So maybe she has an underlying chronic liver disease with an acute episode.
Right.
And maybe has acute on chronic liver failure. We'll know about it.
Right. Right. So something possibly an acute on chronic is what you can summarize based on the history is a possibility. Anything else, or should we move to the investigations? Okay. Can we just go to the next slide?
The investigation on the first day of admission were low hemoglobin of 9.7, total count of 28,710, low platelets 1.3 lakhs, bilirubin total 5.8 with a direct of 1.9, ALT AST of 87 and 185, alkaline phosphatase 707, total protein 6.2, albumin of 2, INR of 1.56.
Okay, can we just stop here right now, because these are just the LFTs that you have done,
Yes.
right? So just look at the left-hand side. Again,
I mean, globulin is much higher.
can we have someone else also contributing?
Yeah.
Someone else from behind. A lot of postgraduates. Someone just get up and just tell. The levels are in front of you. So you are talking about something here. Okay, so you are saying that there is a low albumin and a high globulin. That's the point you're trying to make. Right. Is that all? So INR is deranged. Anything else?
That the direct bilirubin is not so much raised here. I mean, indirect is probably more raised.
Here. So,
Yeah, there is anemia.
right.
There is indirect bilirubin which is raised.
Yes. High counts. So almost everything is abnormal. But is anyone interested in this part?
It's too low for an acute liver disease. I
Right.
mean,
So as we discussed in the morning, if you're just thinking of some sort of an acute picture, you would expect the ALT especially to be very high, much higher than this particular. It is not as high as we would expect it to be. It's not that it cannot be, it's just that you would expect it to be something more than this.
I mean, anemia and globulin, which is raised in a patient where we are suspecting a background chronic liver disease.
Right.
Autoimmune hepatitis will become a very important.
Excellent. So increased globulin is something that you need to keep in mind. Most of the times we look after only the albumin. Anything else from the panel? Anyone else would only on the left-hand side?
The alkaline phosphatase is 707. We do not know if there was some
What
pre-existent or clinically anything was there which would suggest. And
Right.
as you said, there is an element of maybe hemolysis here because the indirect bilirubin seems to be very high.
Right.
If you see.
So you're getting a little
And
bit
the
of...
AST is high.
Yeah.
That again is something that I would keep in my mind and think about it later when you have further.
So anemia,
The
high globulin...
TLC, sir, the
Yeah.
TLC is also very high.
Right.
Now, if there is hemolysis going on, the retics can actually increase your TLC. So
Right.
that is one point again in favor of there being some amount of hemolysis going on.
Right. So there is a picture of an acute-like presentation with some hemolysis, with some event to suggest that there is underlying chronic liver disease. Right? So far, that's what we have got. Okay, let's look at those things on the... Can you just go over those investigations?
The ammonia was raised to 60 microgram per deciliter. Electrolytes and renal function tests were normal. Ascitic fluid showed 800 cells with lymphos predominant of 75%, but the SAC ratio was 1.6 gram per DL, suggestive of transudate. The sugars were maintained at 120 milligram per deciliter.
Okay, so let's again come to this. Let's talk about the albumin. High, indicating what? If it doesn't indicate, why was it done?
Didn't get the question, sir.
High ammonia was there. Ammonia level was sent. You have a report of 260. What does that tell you? Does that tell you that there is encephalopathy, or does that tell you that it's just a high ammonia? Is encephalopathy defined clinically or by ammonia? So it's a clinical. So what does high ammonia tell you? Sorry? In an acute setting or a chronic setting?
In acute liver failure, arterial ammonia has a prognostic value rather than a diagnostic value.
Okay, can you repeat that again?
In acute liver failure, arterial ammonia levels have got prognostic value rather than the diagnostic value for the encephalopathy.
Does the panel agree?
I think you're right. The All India Institute of Medical Science paper has Dr. Acharya et al. Have published the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Right. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
This
what
you know,
I'm
but
asking.
that is an acute liver failure. But also you have ammonia which is high. That's how Acharya's paper got published, because for the first time he was showing that serial ammonia in acute liver failure had prognostic value.
Yes.
But otherwise we all know that in chronic liver disease cirrhosis ammonia is elevated.
Can be.
And that contributes to it. So in this patient who also has all the features of chronicity, platelets are low, ascites, high serum ascites, albumin gradient suggestive of portal hypertension. So he has underlying cirrhosis with portal hypertension, above and over which all the rest of the findings just corroborate. And SAG, serum ascites albumin gradient, is the characteristic, although not a sine qua non, of cirrhosis with portal hypertension.
But let's ask, first of all, the ascitic fluid, what is it telling you? I want the postgraduates to answer that. You have done all these tests over here. They must need to tell you something. What do they mean? 800 cells, 25, I presume that percentage of them are neutrophils. What does that tell you? Anyone?
About 800 cells and
How many percentage?
TLC they are getting. Neutrophils are 20.
25. That's what I'm saying. How many percentage? So what are we doing it for?
Neutrophil count of the acidic fluid.
Yeah, so how much does it come to?
170, around 225.
So exactly 200, right? 1/4. So what does...
Less than
wha-
450 cells.
for what?
More than 2.
Dr. Yacha, the question is not for you. Why was this done? Suppose it was 40%. If neutrophils was 40% or 50%, what did it tell you? Sorry? Spontaneous bacterial peritonitis. So does this child have spontaneous bacterial peritonitis based on this? There could be partially treated if there was some treatment, but right now we don't have any evidence. There is something called SAG. Can anyone in the back tell me what does SAAG stand for? Someone get up and talk, one person. Serum ascites albumin gradient. How do you calculate? And what does it mean? How do you calculate it?
Serum albumin minus the ascitic fluid albumin.
Correct. Very simple. Serum albumin minus ascitic fluid albumin, it gives a gradient, and if it's more than 1.1, it is suggestive of portal hypertension. Right? So what is here now?
I have a point.
So is there suggestive? Yes. At present, yes. Okay.
I have a question. I don't know. I think somebody should answer that. That the albumin level is 2, and with that we have calculated the SAG. How much can we really depend on this SAG?
Why is that?
It's only when you don't have a cutoff as to the lower level of albumin. You have problems when you have albumin so low, but 2 is fairly okay. Even when you with 2, you can see that the serum ascites albumin gradient is very high.
Right. Because you would have quite often, you would have albumin in that range.
Yeah, but largely if we do find albumin 2 and below,
very low, you can't.
Yeah,
then
it's not very reliable to
then
depend on.
It's not very reliable. Yeah, but in this situation, okay. The next.
The investigations over a period of 1 month of admissions showed hemoglobin almost the same. Total count has, however, decreased. Platelets count showing a persistent thrombocytopenia. Total bilirubin has shown a gradual increase with a direct component also increasing. The liver enzymes ALT and AST, they showed a gradual increase. Alkaline phosphatase also has shown a decreasing trend. Total protein has, however, improved. Albumin also improving. And INR has worsened with time.
So this is over a period of time, so obviously there has been some treatment going on, side-by-side investigations, but for the presentation they have put that. Is there any comment, Dr. Vaidya, you want to make on this?
No, it has all the hallmarks of a chronic liver disease, and I would like to know more about the clinical condition rather than just the reports.
What this period of time?
Yeah.
Hopefully we will come to that, yeah. Is there anything else?
I think the bilirubin and the INR both are pointing towards the fact that the child seems to be deteriorating. And maybe albumin is risen because of maybe he has received albumin. Otherwise, that doesn't show a dip as such. But INR and bilirubin both seems to be increasing. The AST-ALT seem to be, especially the AST-ALT also increased to some level and then gone down. It's a little fluctuating. But I think the child isn't improving. Numbers are not improving at least.
Numbers are not improving. Yes.
Overall, there is a deterioration absolutely in all the parameters of the report.
Is it just an acute liver disease that is deteriorating?
Most certainly not.
No, it's not an acute disease. It is something else again.
Platelets are also deteriorating.
Sorry, I can't see you. The globulin has gone up.
The albumin is stagnant. From 4.2 is a 50% rise, 6.3.
So globulin has gone up.
Yeah.
It was high to start with and it's going even higher. Yeah. So what is that telling? I don't know if they can interpret that in any specific way. Can anyone interpret the increasing globulin? Anyone on the panel?
The inverse ratio is
That's
further. So that's all. I mean, I would. This was asked me to do some other test beyond this, but nothing more than that. I wouldn't.
So is the panel convinced that this is not an acute liver disease alone which is deteriorating? Just on the basis of it still could be.
This is, I think, the same mandala. Whatever disease she has is the same progression of the same disease.
Right.
Yeah, because platelets have gone down, the bilirubin has progressively worsened.
But is it acute that is deteriorating, or is it acute on
that's why I
chronic or
think the
chronic?
patient has a chronic disease. There's no
Chronic
doubt
disease.
about it.
Okay.
An acute episode has tipped the patient to developing acute on chronic liver disease.
It's fine. So your thing is acute on chronic.
Exactly. So issue is now what happened to the mentation. I want to know what happened to the mentation. Conscious, non-conscious.
You ask them right now. He's asking what has happened to him.
Mentation has improved over the period of time, and also the edema and ascites has decreased.
Okay, so let's come to the next slide. So this is
Our first impression on the day of admission was acute liver failure. Differentials were infections, drugs, metabolic, autoimmune, and indeterminate. However, there was no history of any excessive drug intake or drug abuse, so drug was out of the differentials. We had done a HIV IgM, which was positive, HBs AG, HCV antibody, and HIV IgM was negative.
yeah. Any comment?
Stop here.
Stop. Okay.
Can we define this as acute liver failure? This is my first question.
Okay. So you tell us.
Okay. As per the definition of pediatric acute liver failure study group, acute liver failure is INR more than 1.5 plus encephalopathy, or INR more than 2, irrespective of the encephalopathy, with no evidence of chronic liver disease in the patient. Here, there are very obvious chronic liver disease evidences that we have seen right from the beginning till the end. So, acute liver failure, to call it acute liver failure straight away would not be proper, but I have a rider there that, like doctors were mentioning that this could be an ACLF, and a lot of ACLFs can be confused with ALF, and there are some diseases which may present as ALF, but underlying they always turn out to be ACLF, and I won't mention
Okay,
those
so
names.
ACLF is acute and chronic. Yeah. So
See,
yeah.
acute, I was trying to not say that because you told me, acute on chronic liver failure, like doctor mentioned, that is an undiagnosed or a diagnosed chronic liver disease in the background, superadded with acute decompensation. And the acute decompensation is in the form of the jaundice, and within a month of jaundice, either ascites or encephalopathy occurs, and there's also coagulopathy of more than 1.5. And the jaundice level should be more than 5. So it's
Okay.
a little confusing. It's confusing for everybody, even for people who are working on it. So just that much is what I can...
Right.
The pediatric definition and even the adult definition of acute liver failure, the American definition, was brought in because two diseases, Wilson's disease as well as autoimmune hepatitis, they present acutely. And because they present acutely, you probably may not think about Wilson's and autoimmune liver disease. That is why they took the duration of 26 weeks.
Right.
Otherwise, classically, acute liver failure comes within 8 weeks, or 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or 8 weeks. Because of these two diseases, they prolonged the definition.
Right. So the question was whether you should call it acute liver failure. They call it on day one, just on the clinical history. That's what we go by and give them the benefit of doubt. But over a period of time, it should change. So HAV is positive, so that suggests it's acute hepatitis A. I think that's a good enough marker. How good is the sensitivity specificity of HAV IgM for hepatitis A? Could it be a false positive?
No.
No. So it's a reasonably good test.
It's a reasonably good test, but with a background of whatever we've seen up till now, just calling it acute.
No, not just. No. So is there acute hepatitis A? There may be something pre-existing.
There is an acute hepatitis A infection.
Cool. So that every panel agrees to that?
Yeah, HAV IgM positive indicates that this patient currently has acute hepatitis A,
correct. So full
overlying something else.
Yeah.
Right. So the second test that were done were HCV IgM, HBsAg, HCV antibody. Anyone wants to comment? Should it have been done?
HCV antibody, yes, because there is a background that I'm
So you're
worried
looking at the
about.
background, not at the acute presentation. If it was acute, you would not be interested
No,
in the
for the
anti-HCV.
acute presentation, I would not.
Okay. Can we have the next?
Our diagnosis was acute liver failure due to hepatitis A. The management was hepatic drip, N-acetylcysteine, IV cefotaxime, vitamin K, tablet furosemide, tablet aldactone, FFP, and suspension lactulose. The course in the ward was the edema and ascites has decreased, sensorium normalized, icterus however darkened, and the liver was persistently firm and palpable. LFTs, there was no improvement, and CBC showed a persistent thrombocytopenia.
This is over a period of 1 month, right?
Yes.
Approximately 3 weeks to 1 month. So 3 weeks to 1 month, there was no improvement in the liver function test, and thrombocytopenia and firm hepatomegaly persisted. So do we have 5 more, or is that just 5 more? Okay. So is there
Can I ask one thing? Why was an antibiotic given here?
So prophylactic antibiotic, the ascitic fluid, the counts were high, as well as the ascitic fluid counts were high, and there is controversial role of antibiotics in acute liver failure. So we have taken the chance of giving antibiotic.
Would yes.
I think this patient merits serum ceruloplasmin.
Yeah, we
May
will
bring elevation.
Going beyond.
No. As a part of in this patient,
Dr.
it
Yacha,
is not only hepatitis A, E we will think of. We should simultaneously, because the liver is sharp,
Yeah, this is bad.
you should do
let the slide.
panel for chronic liver
Dr.
disease.
Yacha, let the case
Including
get over.
Bhattacharya, I would say.
Dr.
Not that it
Yacha,
is.
let the case get over. We have to make it for discussion. It's not over yet. It's still a 5 minutes.
Okay, fine.
Right. So, would you have given cefotaxime in this child?
In my center, as a first drug of choice for a patient who's coming from the community, will be cefotaxime.
In this child?
If,
High
like she was
counts.
talking of acute liver failure.
Yeah.
In acute liver failure, if she's coming from the community showing no other signs, TLCs, in this case, the TLC is very high.
high.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have given her. But since the
case you would
TLC was high, I would have given cefotaxime.
N-acetylcysteine?
NAC is not if you're labeling it as ACLF or ALF, I will give NAC. But if it is a CLD, decompensated CLD, then I possibly won't give NAC.
You want to say something?
Antibiotics acts because infection is the commonest cause of
Killer.
mortality in these patients. So there's no doubt about antibiotics. N-acetylcysteine, it's been, if you define it as whatever definition, acute liver failure, give NAC.
In the Sorry?
Yeah, if you have defined, if the patient falls into the definition of acute liver failure, and I think in the pediatric age group 2.2, without encephalopathy also would fall in, then I would give N-acetylcysteine.
Does the panel agree with that for the pediatric age group, that just if it's an acute liver failure, typically you would give NAC routinely?
Yes, this patient is turning out to be ACLF-like with an acute decompensation. There is a background. I would still give NAC, but
Even-
if it was, otherwise I would not.
In the plain or simple acute liver failure, because the adult
Plain and
recommendations-
simple acute liver failure, I would give.
Okay, you
I
would
would
give.
give for ACLF, but I would not give for decompensated liver disease, a chronic decompensation.
Anyone else?
About NAC or
Yeah.
generally?
Okay, on this.
Yeah, no, just want to clarify what is this hepatic drip and what is this FFP for an INR of 1.7? Is it really just these two things I want to clarify?
Hepatic drip is a high glucose concentration IV fluid drip. This is 4 to 6 milligram per kg per minute, the IV fluid. That's the IV fluid. FFP, we may not have been given, but however, it was given. It was not indicated in this patient, but then it was given.
Okay, that's fine.
So
Next
can
slide.
we clarify from the panelists, is there a need to give FFP for high iron?
As I mentioned earlier, high INR is an extremely good sensitive marker for prognosis of liver disease. It's not a marker for bleeding risk. So you don't give FFPs unless there is some kind of bleeding risk or you are doing a bolt or doing some kind of surgeries, etc. Otherwise, you don't give FFP. Even though if INR is 3.44, you still don't give FFPs.
Well, I have a personal disagreement, not over NAC, over NAC, but that we can discuss later. But that's can you answer Dr. Yacha's question? Can we answer Dr. Yacha's question, because he's been waiting for that. Next slide. Next slide.
So this was a prolonged cholestasis in hepatitis A. So we had done the USG abdomen, which was showing a liver with coarse ecotexture with a span of 10.3 centimeter. Portal vein was 13 millimeter at the porta with mild splenomegaly span of 11 centimeter and moderate ascites.
Next slide.
So our differentials at that time was metabolic or autoimmune. So we have done immunoglobulin levels, which was 1,650 grams per deciliter, which is raised. We did ANA, ASMA, and anti-LKM antibodies, which were negative. So we ruled out autoimmune.
Okay, so the panel, first of
I would,
yeah, no,
I would actually first, that's because perhaps we see Wilson's disease much more commonly.
Yeah.
I would have first straight away taken the child, got a slit lamp, and got the rest of the test done.
Absolutely. I agree. But are those two possible diagnoses right? The first two common chronic liver diseases at 10 years in pediatric age group should be Wilson's and autoimmune? Is that acceptable first
See,
of all?
my problem with prolonged cholestasis, I have a problem
No,
with...
just overall. Two commonest chronic liver disease at 10 years of age in children.
Yeah, Wilson's disease and autoimmune.
Okay, first two, fine. Okay, no. Next, Seema, you're saying something?
My problem is this word cholestasis. Because see, the minute you talk about cholestasis, whatever may be, I'm not talking of hepatitis A as such, I'm just saying cholestasis. If you're labeling it as cholestasis, prolonged cholestasis, then Wilson's disease cannot be a differential diagnosis of cholestasis. So how have you said cholestasis is something that I would like to be,
Okay, so for want of time, we just got 20 seconds. Can we go to the next slide? We'll answer this a little late. Yeah. Okay.
Optal examinations showed bilateral KF ring. Ceruloplasmin was low, 7.16 milligram per deciliter, with a 24-hour urinary copper which was raised, which is 290.6 microgram 24 hours. The esophagogastroduodenoscopy was done, which was suggestive of small esophageal varices.
So is that enough evidence to label this as Wilson's disease? Anyone, just before that, sorry, anyone has... This is Wilson's. Does anyone disagree? Panel, anyone want to make a comment on this?
My only problem would be later on, because your albumin has been very low. I think for this audience, this is Wilson.
This is Wilson's, okay.
Yeah, I will not go further.
Kefring hai na? So hai na? So it's done.
For our urine, Wilson's.
It is Wilson's.
No doubt about it.
Agreed, agreed, sir. I will not say it.
Yeah.
Can we diagnose in the absence of K-ring Wilson's disease?
Can you diagnose? Yes. Yes.
And how sensitive or specific is raised alkaline phosphatase to exclude Wilson's disease?
No. You normally get a low alkaline phosphatase primarily in the acute liver failure setting, but that's a different group. We can have the discussion later on. But I think let's not confuse the audience. We can have this
No,
discussion.
I just want to make one point, and this low alkaline phosphatase is, I think, an erroneous finding coming from the West. It is low alkaline phosphatase in patients who are already crossed adolescence. If you look at our patients, and if you look at patients who are growing, a patient who, let's say a child who is 12 years old will have an alkaline phosphatase of 1,000. So for each increase in age, there's always an increased alkaline phosphatase. So you can't just use alkaline phosphatase as single value. In children, patients are growing, so alkaline phosphatase is elevated, and I think that has to be kept in mind. I think we are far too long we relied on this ratio of bilirubin and alkaline phosphatase and disregarded Wilson's disease. That is, for God's sake, it's only in patients who have already crossed adolescence, not in children.
I have a point here that the zinc is actually required as a coenzyme for alkaline phosphatase, and because of that competitive fact, you tend to have a low alkaline phosphatase in children with Wilson's. Not only that, once you start treating them with DPEN, the alkaline phosphate starts increasing actually. This is what we're seeing in our 70 odd Wilson's that we're seeing in our
Okay, so that's just the reason why we didn't want to talk about alkaline phosphatase.
Okay, we'll not
That's the reason why I said we'll discuss it later. Okay, because we already passed time. Is there any? So the diagnosis as basis of what we have in this particular child is Wilson's disease, right? Next.
So our final diagnosis was acute on chronic liver disease, hepatitis A, superadded on a Wilson's disease cirrhosis with portal hypertension with hypersplenism. We treated the child with capsule penicillamine 20 milligram per kg per day, tablet pyridoxine and low copper diet, and we followed up for 6 months and it showed a improving liver function test.
So do you want to show your last slide?
Reviewing the literature.
The one after that.
So hepatitis A vaccination in all children with chronic liver disease is advisable.
I think this is something, so the message is acute hepatitis with danger signals, look for acute liver failure or acute or chronic. Two commonest causes of chronic are Wilson's disease and autoimmune hepatitis. Yeah, sorry. Wilson's disease and autoimmune hepatitis, those are the two things you need to keep in mind. Look for the child, investigate the child. There are a lot of pluses and minuses. This was a very straightforward case because all the parameters come positive, but it's quite likely that you may have some positive, some negative, and that makes the matter more confusing. That's not the topic we're going to discuss today. But please, if you get up any child with chronic liver disease in children, and if you are from a metro, please vaccinate them with not only hepatitis A, but I would say hepatitis A, B, and even typhoid vaccine.
My point is that suppose your autoimmune markers would have come positive in this patient. So what would you think of? He had hepatitis A positivity.
It could have been.
Hepatitis A patients may have, some of them may have autoimmune markers positive. That doesn't mean autoimmune liver disease,
And
even
even
in this setting.
Wilson's disease
But
also
here,
has.
in this patient, it is negative. Therefore, it is added. Yes, it is not autoimmune, but had it been positive, you could not have labeled this patient as autoimmune hepatitis with a superimposed hepatitis A infection. That is the point.
Autoimmune hepatitis is a diagnosis of excluding other disorders which
yes,
can be diagnosed.
known cases have to be, known causes have to be ruled out. That is the point. And Wilson's disease merits number one consideration. Number one consideration is a treatable condition. Totally.
Both are. Thank you.